In this world that is constantly pulling us to reveal more and more about ourselves, it's important to remember that you don't owe anyone all of your secrets. We live in an age of oversharing where every thought, feeling, and moment is put on display. But let me ask you, does this really make you feel seen, or does it make you feel exposed? The reality is that sometimes we need to protect our inner world, to keep certain things close to our hearts, for ourselves and no one else. Vulnerability is powerful, but there is strength in boundaries too. Your story is yours to share when you're ready, and there is no shame in holding some of your truth in private. When you share too much too soon, you open yourself to judgments and expectations that can weigh you down. Not everyone is prepared for the depth of who you are, and that's okay. Not everyone needs to be. Your life is sacred, and your journey is sacred. There's power in preserving the parts of yourself that are still unfolding, still in progress. Keep some things for yourself. Don't allow others to rush your healing, your growth, or your transformation. You are a work of art, not a product to be picked apart. Allow yourself the grace of being a mystery to the world while you continue to build in a world where information is constantly being exchanged and where personal lives are often put on display for public consumption. It's crucial to understand the value and necessity of boundaries. Boundaries are not about building walls to keep others out. They are about protecting your own space, your own sense of self, and your emotional well-being. Every person has an inherent right to determine how much of themselves they reveal to the world. Boundaries help us create a healthy sense of ownership over our lives, and they allow us to decide how we engage with others. Without boundaries, we risk losing touch with our own truth, becoming overwhelmed by other people's expectations, or feeling drained by constantly trying to please everyone. The concept of boundaries is not one that is easily embraced by everyone. Often we are taught to be accommodating, to be open, and to give. From a young age, many of us are socialized to believe that in order to be loved or valued, we must always be available, always willing to share, and always transparent. Society tells us that the more we give, the more we are loved. But this idea, while well-intentioned, can be incredibly harmful if it leads us to overextend ourselves in ways that ultimately compromise our emotional health. The truth is, by not setting boundaries, we begin to lose ourselves. We may feel guilty for taking time for ourselves, we may second-guess our need for privacy, or we may fear rejection if we don't offer more of ourselves to others. The problem arises when we begin to give too much and forget to give back to ourselves. Setting boundaries is not an act of selfishness, it is an act of self-care. When you set boundaries, you are telling the world that your time, your emotions, and your energy are precious. You are communicating that you respect yourself enough to protect your personal space and that you recognize the value of maintaining your own sense of identity. Boundaries help preserve your energy, allowing you to focus on what truly matters to you without getting lost in the demands or judgments of others. When you set boundaries, you also create a space where you can be authentic. Authenticity doesn't come from oversharing or divulging every personal detail of your life. Authenticity comes from being true to yourself, regardless of how much others know. It's about living in alignment with your values, your beliefs, and your passions. By creating boundaries around what you share with others, you give yourself the opportunity to reflect on what is truly important to you and what feels right to express. Boundaries allow you to engage with others in ways that feel safe and meaningful, rather than out of obligation or pressure. Setting boundaries is also about establishing limits on what you will tolerate from others. It's about drawing a line between what you will accept and what you will not. This is particularly important in relationships where boundaries are often tested and pushed. When you establish clear boundaries, you send a message that you are not afraid to stand up for yourself and your needs. This, in turn, creates a healthier dynamic in which respect and understanding are paramount. It's easy to get caught up in the desire to please others, but when we do so at the expense of our own needs and well-being, we set ourselves up for emotional exhaustion. Boundaries help prevent this by ensuring that we are not constantly sacrificing our own happiness in order to accommodate others. Moreover, boundaries allow us to cultivate a sense of autonomy. As human beings, we crave independence and the ability to make decisions for ourselves. When we fail to set boundaries, we risk giving away our power to others, allowing them to dictate the course of our lives. Boundaries serve as a reminder that you have the right to choose your own path, to prioritize your own well-being, and to live life on your own terms. This sense of autonomy is essential for personal growth and fulfillment. It empowers us to make choices that align with our true desires, without being swayed by external pressures. It's important to understand that boundaries are not rigid or fixed. They are fluid and can change depending on the context and the people involved. Boundaries are meant to evolve as you grow and change, and they should be adjusted based on your needs at any given time. For example, you may find that your emotional capacity shifts during certain seasons of life, or that you need to draw more firm boundaries with certain individuals based on how their behavior affects you. This flexibility allows you to stay in control of your own experience while navigating the complexities of relationships, work, and social interactions. By embracing the power of boundaries, you also develop a stronger sense of self-awareness. You begin to understand what feels right for you and what doesn't. You learn how to listen to your intuition and recognize when something isn't serving you. This self-awareness is key to maintaining balance in your life. It ensures that you are not overextending yourself, and that you are prioritizing your own needs in a way that supports your well-being. Boundaries also contribute to building resilience. When you are able to set and maintain clear boundaries, you are better equipped to handle challenges and adversity. You are less likely to become overwhelmed by external pressures because you know where you stand and what you are willing to accept. This sense of inner strength allows you to face difficult situations with confidence, knowing that you have the ability to protect your emotional space and handle whatever comes your way. In conclusion, boundaries are not a luxury, they are a necessity. They protect your emotional, mental, and physical well-being, and they allow you to navigate the world with greater clarity and purpose. By setting boundaries, you create a safe space for yourself to grow, heal, and thrive. You reclaim your power, preserve your energy, and honor your needs. You protect your authenticity and create deeper, more meaningful connections with others. Remember, it's not about shutting people out, it's about protecting what is sacred within you and ensuring that you remain the author of your own life. Boundaries are not barriers, they are bridges to a healthier, more fulfilled foundation on your terms. Vulnerability is often seen as a strength, but it must be approached with balance. It's true that showing our vulnerability allows us to connect more deeply with others, to share our authentic selves, and to be seen for who we truly are. However, vulnerability is not a one-size-fits-all concept, and the way we express it must be handled with care and self-awareness. The balance lies in understanding when and how to share and when it's important to protect our emotional space. Vulnerability is powerful, but it should be practiced in ways that protect our well-being, allowing us to grow and connect without losing ourselves in the process. When we talk about vulnerability, we are referring to the act of opening ourselves up to others, allowing ourselves to be seen for our true selves, including our weaknesses, fears, and uncertainties. It involves revealing parts of our lives or emotions that we typically keep hidden, either out of fear of judgment or a desire to protect ourselves. Vulnerability invites others in, offering a chance for deeper understanding, empathy, and connection. At its core, it's about authenticity, about showing up as who we truly are, not just as a polished or idealized version of ourselves. It's about being willing to let go of the mask we sometimes wear to protect ourselves from the judgments of others. Yet, as much as vulnerability can deepen relationships, it is important to understand that not every situation calls for complete transparency. There is such a thing as oversharing, and when we overshare, we risk exposing ourselves in ways that can leave us feeling vulnerable in unhealthy ways. Vulnerability requires a balance between openness and self-protection. In certain situations, it may be wiser to hold back and choose what parts of ourselves we reveal. It's not that we should be dishonest or closed off, but that we should be thoughtful about when and how we allow others to see us. Not every moment or every person is the right context for revealing our most tender emotions or personal struggles. It's crucial to ask ourselves, is this the right time, and is this person ready to receive what I'm about to share? Vulnerability becomes harmful when it is shared indiscriminately with people who are not equipped to hold it. Not everyone can handle the depths of another person's vulnerability. Some people may not understand the weight of what you're sharing, or worse, they may take advantage of it. If we are constantly exposing ourselves in ways that are not reciprocated or respected, we run the risk of feeling drained, rejected, or misunderstood. This imbalance can leave us emotionally depleted and potentially cause us to withdraw or shut down, creating a barrier that prevents further connection. It is essential to assess the capacity of others before deciding how much of our vulnerability to reveal. Not every person we encounter needs to know the most intimate parts of our journey. The act of sharing should be reciprocal, with mutual respect for boundaries and emotional needs. Furthermore, Being vulnerable in a balanced way means understanding that vulnerability is not a permanent state. It's not about being open and raw all the time, but about knowing when it's appropriate and when it's time to protect our emotional space. Vulnerability is about choosing to show up as you are, but not at the cost of your emotional well-being. It's about trusting yourself to know when you need to shield certain parts of your life or heart for a time. In some instances, you might find it necessary to retreat and give yourself the time and space to process your emotions before you share them with others. Healing and growth often happen in private, and you don't need to constantly expose your internal world to others to validate your experience. There is power in choosing solitude when needed, allowing yourself the space to grow without feeling pressured to share the journey with everyone around you. Another aspect of balanced vulnerability is knowing that it doesn't always mean seeking approval or validation from others. True vulnerability is not about sharing in order to gain sympathy, affirmation, or approval. It is about allowing yourself to be seen in your full humanity. Vulnerability is an expression of self-acceptance, not self-justification. When we are vulnerable for the sake of seeking validation from others, we may find ourselves trapped in cycles of insecurity or neediness. True vulnerability comes from a place of strength, knowing that you are worthy of love and respect regardless of how much you share. It's about accepting yourself as you are, without the need for constant external validation. Vulnerability and balance also means respecting the vulnerability of others. Just as we expect others to approach us with care and consideration when they open up, we must do the same when we share our own vulnerabilities. Respect for boundaries and emotional limits is a two-way street. In relationships, it is crucial to offer the same level of understanding and empathy that we hope to receive. If we want others to trust us with their vulnerability, we must be willing to offer our vulnerability in a way that respects their needs and limits as well. It's important to note that vulnerability, when done in balance, also encourages personal growth. It is through vulnerability that we open ourselves to learning more about who we are, what we truly feel, and what we need. It's a gateway to deeper self-awareness and emotional intelligence. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we confront our fears, insecurities, and desires in ways that ultimately help us grow stronger. We learn that we are capable of handling more than we initially thought, and that we don't need to hide from our emotions or experiences. Vulnerability invites us to step outside of our comfort zones and face life with courage rather than fear. In conclusion, vulnerability is a powerful tool for connection, growth, and self-awareness, but it must be practiced with mindfulness and care. We must balance our openness with boundaries, ensuring that we are sharing only when it is appropriate and when it feels safe to do so. True vulnerability is about self-acceptance and strength, not about seeking approval or validation. It is about being authentic while also protecting our emotional well-being. When practiced in balance, vulnerability becomes a powerful way to deepen our relationships with others, strengthen our sense of self, and build resilience in the face of life's challenges. In a world that thrives on constant connection and the need for validation, it's important to recognize that we are not obligated to explain ourselves to everyone. Too often, we feel compelled to justify our decisions, our actions, or our beliefs to others in order to gain acceptance or avoid conflict. However, this constant need for approval can be draining and ultimately detract from our sense of self-worth. The truth is that you have the right to your own privacy, your own truth, and your own choices without feeling the need to explain every aspect of your life to others. Learning to embrace this autonomy is essential for emotional well-being and personal growth. One of the most fundamental aspects of our lives is the power of choice. Every day, we make decisions that shape our lives, whether big or small. From choosing a career path to deciding who we spend our time with, each decision is a reflection of who we are and what we value. These decisions are personal, and they belong to us alone. While it's natural to seek advice from others, we must remember that we are not required to explain our choices to anyone, especially if those choices are aligned with our personal values and needs. Each individual is entitled to make decisions based on their unique circumstances, desires, and perspectives. When we feel the need to explain ourselves, we risk handing over control of our lives to others. We may begin to seek external validation, hoping for reassurance that our decisions are correct or acceptable. This reliance on others' opinions can create feelings of self-doubt and insecurity, undermining our confidence in our own judgment. The reality is that no one else can live your life for you, and no one else can fully understand the complexities of your experiences and emotions. The only person who truly knows what's best for you is you. trusting your own instincts and intuition is a critical part of maintaining your sense of self. Another reason why we often feel compelled to explain ourselves is the desire to avoid judgment. As human beings, we have an inherent need for belonging and acceptance. We fear that if we don't explain our decisions, others will misunderstand us or criticize our choices. However, the truth is that judgment is a part of life, and no matter how much we try to explain ourselves, there will always be people who disagree with or question our decisions. What's important is learning to be comfortable with the idea that we cannot please everyone, and that we don't need to. The desire to constantly explain ourselves in order to avoid judgment can become a never-ending cycle, where we feel trapped by others' opinions. In reality, the more we try to explain, the more we open ourselves to criticism, because the act of explaining often invites further questions or scrutiny. By resisting the urge to explain yourself, you regain control over your narrative. You take ownership of your story and decide what parts of your life are shared and with whom. Not every action or decision requires a justification. You are not obligated to explain your choices to anyone who doesn't have a meaningful stake in your life or well-being. Your life is your own, and how you choose to live it is not for others to dictate. This sense of autonomy fosters a sense of inner peace, as you no longer feel the need to meet others' expectations or adhere to their standards of what is acceptable. Instead, you can focus on making decisions that align with your own values and desires, free from the pressure of outside opinions. Furthermore, when we constantly explain ourselves to others, we may find ourselves overanalyzing our decisions and actions. This over-explanation can create confusion and self-doubt. We may begin to second-guess our choices, questioning whether we made the right decision in the first place. This is often a result of seeking external validation rather than trusting our own judgment. When we are constantly explaining ourselves, we shift our focus from our own inner truth to the opinions of others, which can be destabilizing. The more we explain, the more we open ourselves to outside influence, and the more we lose sight of our own authentic path. Another important aspect of not feeling obligated to explain yourself is that it protects your emotional energy. Explaining your decisions to others can be exhausting, especially if you are repeatedly having to justify or defend yourself. This can drain you emotionally and mentally, leaving little energy for the things that truly matter. By learning to set boundaries around what you choose to explain, you preserve your emotional well-being. You no longer waste time or energy trying to convince others of your worth, your choices, or your beliefs. Instead, you can focus on nurturing your own sense of self and engaging with those who respect and support you without the need for constant justification. Moreover, not explaining yourself to others is an act of self-respect. When you choose not to explain, you are communicating that your decisions are valid on their own, and you don't need anyone's approval to affirm your worth. This is a powerful statement of self-empowerment. It shows that you value yourself enough to trust your own choices, regardless of whether or not they make sense to others. It reflects confidence in your ability to navigate your life on your own terms without feeling the need to seek permission or approval. There's also an element of personal growth that comes from not explaining yourself. When you stop explaining, you begin to fully embrace who you are and where you are in life. You stop seeking approval from others and start looking inward for validation. This shift allows you to develop a deeper connection with yourself, fostering a sense of self-love and self-acceptance. It also encourages you to take ownership of your choices and the consequences that come with them, both good and bad. You become more resilient, able to handle criticism or disagreement without feeling the need to explain or defend yourself. In relationships, not explaining yourself can be a sign of respect. If you find yourself constantly justifying your decisions to others, especially in relationships that are meant to be supportive, it may indicate an imbalance in the relationship. Healthy relationships are built on trust and mutual respect, where each person's choices are honored without the need for constant explanations. By not feeling obligated to explain yourself, you create space for open, honest communication, where both individuals feel valued and respected for who they are without the need for justifications or defenses. Ultimately, not feeling obligated to explain yourself is about reclaiming your power and autonomy. It's about living life on your own terms, trusting your own judgment, and honoring your own needs and desires. It's about understanding that you don't need anyone's approval to be worthy, and that your life is your own to navigate. In doing so, you create space for deeper self-acceptance and a more authentic, fulfilling existence. In a world where our personal growth and transformation are often seen as an open invitation for others to offer their opinions, judgments, and suggestions, it's essential to understand that the process of personal development is deeply personal. Growth is not something that happens on a set timetable, nor is it something that should be rushed. It unfolds in its own time and rhythm, and it's important to give yourself permission to honor that pace. The journey of self-improvement and healing is uniquely yours, and it should not be dictated by the expectations or timelines of others. When we talk about preserving your growth, we are acknowledging the delicate nature of personal evolution. Just as a plant requires time, care, and the right conditions to grow, so too do we need the right environment and space to evolve. If we rush this process or try to meet arbitrary external standards, we risk not only losing sight of our authentic selves, but also stifling our true potential. Growth, especially in its early stages, often needs to be protected and nurtured in private before it can fully bloom in the outside world. One of the reasons that personal growth needs protection is that it often involves confronting difficult emotions, fears, and insecurities. This process can be messy and uncomfortable, and it's not something that everyone is prepared to witness. While it's true that some people can offer us support during our growth, not everyone is capable of handling the intensity of our internal work. If we allow others to rush us or push us to share before we're ready, we can easily become overwhelmed, discouraged, or misunderstood. In these moments, our growth might stall or take a different direction altogether. That's why it's important to be mindful of the environment in which we grow and the people with whom we share our journey. Some of the most profound parts of personal transformation happen in solitude, where we can reflect, learn, and heal without feeling the pressure to prove ourselves to anyone else. Preserving your growth also means recognizing that healing and progress are not linear. It's easy to fall into the trap of comparing our journey to others, especially in a world where social media and external pressures often make it seem like everyone else has it all together. But the truth is that growth is deeply individual, and it doesn't happen on anyone else's timeline. We may have moments of rapid transformation followed by periods of stagnation or setbacks. This doesn't mean that we've failed or that our progress has stopped. It simply means that we are in a phase of growth that requires patience, understanding, and time. Rushing the process can often do more harm than good. It can lead to burnout, frustration, or even a sense of defeat. The act of giving yourself permission to grow at your own pace is a powerful act of self-compassion. It's an acknowledgement that you don't need to be fixed or perfect to be valuable. You are worthy of love and respect regardless of where you are on your journey. We often fall into the trap of thinking that we must have everything figured out before we can move forward, but the reality is that growth is about progress, not perfection. There will always be room for improvement, but that doesn't mean we should rush through the steps of personal development or try to skip over the challenges that help us grow stronger. When we focus on preserving our growth, we also learn to honor the pace at which we change. Transformation takes time, and there are no shortcuts to genuine personal development. This is why it's so important to protect our growth from external pressures. In a world that values productivity and instant results, it can be difficult to resist the urge to speed up our progress. However, when we resist that pressure, we allow ourselves to engage with the process more deeply and authentically. We give ourselves the time and space we need to explore different paths, make mistakes, and learn from them. This process of trial and error is essential to growth. It's not about perfection, but about discovering who we are and what we need along the way. Another key aspect of preserving your growth is maintaining boundaries around how much of your personal journey you share with others. While it can be helpful to have a support system, not everyone is equipped to witness or understand the full extent of your journey. Some people might offer unsolicited advice, attempt to rush your process, or simply not understand the emotional work you are going through. This is not to say that you should isolate yourself entirely, but rather that you should choose carefully who you share your journey with and when. There is power in sharing your growth with those who understand and support you. But there is also power in keeping parts of your journey private until you feel ready to share them. By preserving certain aspects of your growth, you maintain control over your own narrative and prevent others from imposing their expectations on your process. Preserving your growth also means protecting the emotional energy required for transformation. Personal growth and healing can be incredibly taxing on your mental and emotional reserves. It's easy to become overwhelmed by the intensity of the work, especially when we try to balance the demands of life, work, and relationships with our personal development. That's why it's so important to protect your emotional energy during this time. This might mean setting boundaries around how much you give to others, taking time for self-care, or allowing yourself to say no to certain things that don't serve your well-being. The more you protect your energy, the more space you create for healing and growth. Additionally, part of preserving your growth is learning to be patient with yourself. Personal transformation doesn't happen overnight, and it often involves setbacks, challenges, and periods of discomfort. The road to growth is rarely smooth, and it's important to embrace the bumps along the way as part of the process. Instead of expecting immediate results, try to focus on the small steps you're taking toward progress. Celebrate the incremental changes, even if they seem small or insignificant. Over time, these small steps add up to significant transformation, and before you know it, you'll look back and realize how far you've come. This is why it's so important to preserve your growth, because when you allow it to unfold naturally, you will begin to see the incredible results that come from staying the course. In conclusion, personal growth is a sacred process that requires time, patience, and protection. It's not something to be rushed or forced, but rather something to be nurtured in an environment where you feel safe and supported. By preserving your growth, you are giving yourself permission to evolve at your own pace, without the pressures of external expectations. You are creating space for healing, learning, and self-discovery, and you are honoring the uniqueness of your journey. Remember, your growth is yours alone, and it is a beautiful, ongoing process that will unfold in its own time. Embrace it, protect it, and trust that every step you take brings you closer to the person you are meant to become. In a world where social media and external validation often dictate how we see ourselves, it's easy to fall into the trap of seeking external approval for our actions, choices, and even our existence. However, the truth is that you don't need anyone's validation to exist or thrive. The essence of who you are, your worth, and your value is inherent in your being, and it does not rely on anyone's acknowledgement. Learning to live without seeking constant approval from others is one of the most empowering steps towards self-acceptance and emotional freedom. One of the most significant reasons we often seek external validation is that we are conditioned to believe that our worth is defined by others. From a young age, many of us are taught to look for approval from our parents, teachers, peers, and society at large. We are often praised for achievements that align with societal norms and expectations, leading us to equate our worth with external recognition. Over time, this conditioning can become so ingrained that we begin to rely on others' opinions to feel good about ourselves. We start to believe that if others don't acknowledge our worth, then it must not exist. This mindset creates a cycle of dependence, where we continuously look outside of ourselves for validation, never fully trusting that we are enough as we are. The danger of constantly seeking approval is that it places our self-worth in the hands of others, which is an unstable and unreliable foundation. People's opinions and reactions can be unpredictable and inconsistent. One moment, someone might affirm our choices, and the next, they might criticize or judge us. When our sense of worth is dependent on such external sources, we become vulnerable to emotional ups and downs, feeling elated when we receive praise and crushed when we face rejection. This emotional roller coaster can be exhausting and disorienting, leaving us feeling insecure and uncertain of who we are. The key to breaking free from this cycle is to realize that our worth does not depend on external validation. We are inherently valuable regardless of how others perceive us. Living without seeking external validation doesn't mean that we don't care about others or their opinions. It means that we no longer place our self-worth in their hands. We can still seek feedback, advice, or support from others, but we do so without tying our value to their responses. It's about developing the inner strength to trust ourselves and our choices, even when they are not met with approval. This shift in mindset allows us to move through life with more confidence, authenticity, and peace, as we are no longer dependent on the opinions of others to feel secure in who we are. Part of living without needing external validation is learning to embrace our uniqueness and stop comparing ourselves to others. In a society that often promotes competition and comparison, it's easy to fall into the trap of measuring our worth against the achievements or lifestyles of others. We may look at someone else's success, appearance, or lifestyle and feel that we are lacking or falling behind. This type of comparison creates unnecessary pressure and undermines our self-esteem. The truth is that everyone's journey is different, and we are all on our own paths. Our unique experiences, strengths, and challenges are what make us who we are, and they should be celebrated, not measured against someone else's standard. When we stop seeking approval and stop comparing ourselves to others, we begin to free ourselves from the constraints of societal expectations. We can start to define success and happiness on our own terms, without feeling pressured to conform to someone else's idea of what it should look like. This level of self-acceptance allows us to make choices that align with our values, desires, and aspirations rather than trying to meet external standards that may not even reflect who we truly are. Living without needing validation also requires us to cultivate a strong sense of self-love and self-respect. It's easy to seek external approval when we don't love or respect ourselves fully. If we don't believe that we are worthy, we may constantly look for external affirmation to fill that void. However, the more we seek external validation, the more we reinforce the belief that we are not enough as we are. The key to breaking this cycle is to learn to love and accept ourselves unconditionally. This doesn't mean that we are perfect or that we have it all together. It means that we accept ourselves and all our imperfections and flaws, knowing that we are enough just as we are. Self-love is not something that happens overnight. It's a practice that requires time and patience. It starts with acknowledging and accepting our worth, regardless of our achievements or failures. It involves being kind to ourselves, treating ourselves with the same compassion and respect that we would offer to a close friend. As we practice self-love, we begin to build a solid foundation of confidence that is not reliant on others' opinions or approval. This internal validation becomes a powerful source of strength, helping us navigate life with greater resilience and clarity. Furthermore, when we stop seeking external validation, we create space for authenticity. We stop hiding behind masks or trying to meet others' expectations and start showing up as our true selves. We begin to trust that who we are in all our complexities is enough. Authenticity allows us to build deeper connections with others, as we attract people who appreciate us for who we truly are, not for the version we present, in order to gain their approval. When we stop seeking validation, we also give others permission to do the same, creating a ripple effect of authenticity and self-acceptance in our relationships.